I wanted to make a video about this while it was still kind of current, so I can move on. In part, I think though it's the reason why I've been feeling so unwell, though there are a lot of other stresses going on in my life at the moment, so I'm not at my best, so I apologise if I'm not particularly sparky in this. But I wanted to share something that may prove useful to some people at some point. Well, it will at some point in their lives. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of my mother's death. And to those of you who haven't lost your mother, that might just sound like a notable anniversary, but nothing more. And I would have felt exactly the same prior to my mother dying too. I think, though, that it's a significant milestone, and I'm going to try and explain why. It has been said to me many times, actually, don't make any major decision for 2 years after a major loss of this kind, and B, nothing is like losing your mother, and that you cannot know what it feels like until it happens. And both of those are true, I think. Firstly, I have been forced into making really major decisions in the past couple of years. I mean, I'm about to make my 3rd move in 2 years, all of which happened since my mother's death. Actually instigated by her becoming frail, but then unmovable, impossible to change by the time I realised that she was actually dying, which took about 6 months or so, a bit more actually, 8 months. And some of the decisions I made were incredibly poor. And I think I knew it at the time, but I had to make them. I had no choice. So I would say to anyone who is in that position, who has a choice as to whether to make a significant decision. I mean, obviously, we make thousands of decisions every day, tiny ones, and we have to carry on making those. But don't make any major life-changing decisions in that 2-year period, if at all possible. I mean, none of the decisions I've made have been life-threatening, or though I did actually nearly kill myself once on rushing down to see my mother because the hospice had pressed me into doing it, but that wasn't really my decision. Well, it was, but I was harassed into it. But they were stupid and costly in various ways, and I would prefer not to have had made them. So, and I can also feel myself now, I'm just at the end, and it's very peculiar that I'm actually making my hopefully final move a week after this 2-year anniversary. That is quite interesting to me, that has kind of fallen that way. It hasn't been. I haven't designed it that way, and I'm starting to feel like I can now begin a new chapter of my life. That these last 2 years has really been a very peculiar transition. One that I could not have possibly imagined or anticipated. You just have no idea what it's going to be like. And this is not meaning that I have spent the last 2 years in emotional pieces, grieving, because that hasn't been the case. In part because of the nature of my mother and I, that we did a lot of that actually in the 6 months prior to her death. So, and I know not everybody gets the chance to do that. But because I've been totally disoriented, really. I mean, partly because I've been moving so much, but also because she is no longer there. And I lost my father many years ago, and that was devastating in itself, but just not comparable. Not comparable at all. There is something in the bond between a mother and a child and its mother, that, there has never been a time in your life, from the moment of conception of you, that person hasn't been there. Now, I know some people have poor relationships with their mothers or no relationship with their mother, in which case perhaps it doesn't apply. I don't know. I can't possibly say. But suddenly, there is nobody there that supports you in that same kind of way, even if it's often a wordless support. And there is also no one standing between you and death. I mean, there never really was, but it feels very different. Your whole life is changed forever. And you cannot anticipate that. And you cannot imagine it. The people that have... I've had a lot of compassion. People have been very caring, and I wouldn't dismiss any of that. But the people who truly understand are the people who've already lost their mothers, and they just innately understand. There seems to be a commonality in that, whether or not they were particularly close to their mothers. So these two elements are very important to bear in mind. If you can, you know, I feel like I've been through a 2-year-long transition and almost a convalescence. So yes, I think it's worth noting